Good morning, students. Welcome back to the session. Today, we are going to discuss regarding the computer system organization, operating system structure, operating system operations, and what do you mean by a process, and what are the different things we'll be going to have in a process. Today, we'll be going to look after all these things. Fine. So, first of all, what do you mean by a computer organization system? Computer system organization. As we all know, we have studied in computer organization that the main important parts of a computer are like CPU, IO devices, and the memory and the control unit. So these are the main important parts of a computer organization or a computer system. So how these devices are useful in order to accomplish a specific task. So how they are going to be organized and how they are going to be useful in order to complete a specific task. The computer system is majorly a combination of peripheral devices, memory, CPU, and secondary storage devices, as we all know, right? So when a task is going to be executed, like we'll be going to have the CPU as well as the memory. So let me say you like this. So when a task is going to be executed, or suppose if we want to say any particular task that is going to be done, so what we'll be going to do? So here suppose we'll be going to have a particular task. Fine. So this is the task 1. So here we'll be going to have CPU, and here we are going to have some IO devices. Fine. So how the computer system is going to be organized in the sense, suppose here there is another task T1 and T2. If suppose T1 is executing in the CPU, like if T1 wants some IO device, what it is going to do? It will halt the process. It will halt the execution, and T1 will be going to give in the IO process. At that particular instant of time, the CPU is in idle state. So what the thing we have to do? We shouldn't make our CPU to be in idle state. We have to make the CPU as much busy as possible. So at that time, what the operating system will be going to do is, it is going to allocate the task T2 to the CPU. So now the CPU is in busy state. So we are not going to make our processor at any cost in idle state. Suppose if T1 is presently executing over here, but it is in need of a particular IO device, so it will stop its process and it will go for the IO operation, some printer or some scanning operation. At that time the CPU is in ideal state, but we don't want our CPU to be in ideal state. So that is the reason what the operating system is going to do is, this operating system will allocate the process T2 or the task T2 to the CPU. So that the CPU is always in a busy state. So this is how the operations are going to be done. Fine. So here the IO devices and the CPU are both should be in execute concurrently. Some of the processes are scheduled for CPU, at the same time some of the processes are going to be scheduled for the input and output devices. Fine. This is how we'll be going to execute the process. That is the one of the main advantage that we are going to have, or one of the main functionality that is going to be provided by the operating system. And we are going to have different and multiple device controllers. So each will be going to see here, if you have seen the device controller, this is the device controller. So here we are going to have the printer, we'll be going to have the printer, keyboard and mouse. These are going to be under the control of device controller, and hard disks will be in the control of disk controller, and monitors like we'll be going to have in the graphics controller. So everything is connected to the memory part. Fine. So here we'll be going to provide a buffer for each and every device, so the input and output data can be stored onto the buffer. What is the need of a buffer? If there is no buffer, like we can't store the information before itself. Suppose if we are not going to have the buffer, suppose I have done three tasks, so me have to do four processes has to come onto the queue. But if there is no buffer, we can't keep all the four processes into the onto the queue. Only one process we have to take, and that process should be executing in the CPU, and there is no place for the second operation to keep. So if there is no place, again we need to wait for the second process to come, and then that process to be executed by the CPU. So this is all somewhat clumsy. So what we are going to do is, like, we are going to keep a buffer, and we are going to store some number of processes onto the buffer. Suppose we have stored four processes onto the buffer. If first process is executing in the CPU and second process will be in the queue, then when the first process has been completed, automatically we'll be going to take second process from the buffer, and that is going to be given to the CPU. So this is how the buffer is going to be helpful. So here the data is going to be moved from the memory to the respective buffers, like as we are having here. So the data will be moving from the memory to the respective disk control buffer, and then it will be going to the hard disk. Here the data will be moving from memory to the device controller buffer, and then the data will be moving to the printer. After completing its job, again the data will be coming from the printer to the device controller buffer, and again it will be storing on to the memory. This is how the things are going to be happen in the computer system organization. So here the buffers are very much useful in order to store the data for quick purpose or for the quick usage. So that is the purpose of the buffer. So the device controllers use an interrupt to inform the CPU that operations have been completed. How the CPU come to know, like, whether the task which is assigned to the printer has been completed? By making use of an interrupt call, we'll be going to inform the CPU that the assigned task has been completed. Then the CPU is going to halt the process, and the data is again going to be loaded onto the memory. This is how the computer system has been organized. So here we are going to have hard disk, printer, input and output devices are there. So hard disks will be in the control of disk controllers, and these input output devices will be in the device controllers, and monitor in the graphics controller. Each and every disk controller, device controller, or graphics handle, everything will be going to have the buffers. The memory is going to be moving from the memory to the disk controller buffer, and from that buffer it will be going to the hard disk. In the same way, from the memory it is going to store in the device controller buffer, and from that it is going to be allocated to the printer or keyboard or mouse. Suppose for example it has been allocated to the printer. If the task has been completed, what the thing we have to do? We have to generate an interrupt. So interrupt in the sense, we are going to stop the process and informing the CPU that the task has been completed. So this task is again going to be stored in this memory part. This is how the organization is going to be done. And next one is the operating system structure. So we are going to have, like, this is the basic structures. These two are the basic structures. Normally you will be going to have 6 different structures that we'll be going to see in the when it comes to the main part of the operating system structure. So these are the two major basic structures of an operating system. So what are the two major basic structures? The first one is the simple structure, and the second one is the layered structure. So simple structure we call, like, modular structures, like MS-DOS structure, we call it as a simple structure. So the modular structure will also allow the programmer to hide the information as required and implement internal notice. What does it mean? In the sense, this is the simple structure. So simple structure in the sense, like, you will be going to have the application program, system program, device drivers, RAM BIOS drivers, and these are the 4 things we are going to have. So application application program in the sense the user program. What the user want to do a particular program or a particular task, that task we call it as an application program. And next one is the system program. When it has been processed onto the system, then it is going to be converted into system program. By making use of the device drivers, this is going to be executed and then it will be going to stored onto the RAM. So this is the simple structure. But what is the drawback you will be going to face with this simple structure is like in this simple structure, like we have a great control over the computer system. We need a great control over the computer system. Why? Because like as the data is flowing from the application program to the system program, and then the device drivers, and then the RAM device drivers where we are going to store the data. So this is the simple structure which does not involve anything. Why? Because all the things we are following in only one layer, one straight line of the processing system. So if anything happens, all the things will be going to get damaged. So in order to overcome that drawback, we have gone for the layered structure. Layered structure in the sense, like in the simple structure, what the thing we are having, there is no layers. I mean, everything we are going to store at in a single place. We are not going to store some data in one place and some data in other place. At a particular place, we are going to store the data. If anything occurs or if anything crashes, the whole entire system is going to be crashed in the simple structure, or entire data has been lost in the simple structure. In order to overcome that drawback, what we have gone for is we have gone for the layered structure. So what do you mean by layered structure? Layered structure is nothing but, in order to overcome the drawback of a simple structure, we have been kept different layers for different things. So how many layers are there? In the sense, there are majorly 6 layers are there. In each of the 6 layers, we have kept one task in this each layer. So this type of operating system improves the performance. Like in simple system, we don't have that much performance. So when it comes to the layered structure, the performance has been increased. Why? Because we have divided into different modules or different parts. If we want to do anything related to hardware, in the sense, we can go particularly to that hardware module, we can do the task. If we want to do anything related to process, means we can go to that process module and we can do that particular task. If something crashes in this process module, in the sense, only that module will be suffering, remaining all modules will be safe. So this is the advantage what is there that is having in the layered structure. Fine. But when it comes to the simple structure, it doesn't happen. Why? Because each and everything will be going to write in a particular place. If something happens, the whole entire thing is going to be destructed. So in order to get overcome for the from that destruction, where we have gone is layered structure. Layered means like we'll be going to have different layers. In each layer, we'll be going to keep a specific task. So this layering provides a better advantage in an operating system. So all the layers have been defined separately and interact with each other as required. They can interact with each other layer. If one layer user programs IO buffers, and it is very much easy to create a particular layer, and it is very much easy to maintain a particular layer, and it is very much easy to update the data in the particular layer, or it is very much easy to delete the data onto the particular layer. Why? Because we are only concerned with the particular layer but not with the all the layers. If we want, suppose for example, you will be going to, like I'm going to teach for the CSE as well as IT. Like you are having 3 classrooms. Fine. If all people are dumped onto a single classroom, it is very much difficult for me to take. Why? Because some people are CSE and some people are IT. Suppose if I have differentiated between the CSE and an IT, so it will be very much easy for me. What I should say to CSE, it will be very easy for me. If in IT who are going to study, who are not going to study, I can pick up easily. But when all sat together, all branches sat together, it is very much difficult for me to pick the particular people, or in order to call the particular people, or in order to teach a particular thing for the all the people. In the same manner, like if we are dumping all the things in a particular place, it will be highly difficult in order to edit, in order to modify, in order to delete, or in order to recover anything. And another more much major disadvantage what we find is, suppose if anything crashes occur, the whole data has going to be lost. So that is the major disadvantage of simple structure. So in order to overcome all the drawbacks of that simple structure, we have gone for the layered structure. And this is the diagram of layered operating system. Here we are going to have 6 layers, and the first layer, the innermost layer, we are going to have the hardware layer, and the second layer is CPU scheduling layer, third layer is memory management layer, fourth layer is process management layer, fifth management is IO buffer layer, and finally the sixth layer is user programs layer. So these are the 6 layers that has been divided, or we have been modules, like we have been module in order to have the better flexibility of the things what we are going to do. And when it comes to the user, when it comes to this user programs are nothing but the application programs. What the programs that are going to be done by the user are going to be seen in the user programs. So next one is the buffer. As I have said you before, buffer is very much important. Why? Because in order to do a particular task, in order to perform any task to the from the with the CPU, like we have to keep a buffer in order to have the high efficiency in the sense, like we can increase number of programs doing per unit time, so that efficiency has to be increased. Why? Because if there is no buffer, and if the first task has been completed in the CPU, we have to wait for the second task, and that second task to be loaded onto the CPU. Some amount of time we are going to be wasting. So in order to save the time, what we are going to do is, we are going to keep a certain sort of buffer. So in the from that buffer, if one is once first program execution completed, we'll be going to take the second program and we'll be going to execute onto the buffer. So that is the main advantage of using the buffer. So and IO buffer in the sense input output buffer, input output operations, what are the inputs we are going to give and what are the output operations to be distributed to the CPU, all the things are going to be stored in the buffer. And next one is process management layer. So process management layer is mainly concerned with the processes. Suppose for example, like you are going to have uh, different processes. So what are the different processes we are having? Suppose you are going to have process P1 and process P2 and process P3. These are the 3 processes we are having. Here we are going to have a CPU. Fine. So process management in the sense, suppose process P1 is going to take 5 seconds of time, 5 seconds of time in order to complete its task. Process P2 takes 7 seconds of time, and process P3 takes 2 seconds of time. Okay. So these are the time limits. Now process some X process is executing in the CPU. So why? Because we have to maintain a buffer. So this is the buffer. So this we call it as a buffer. All the processes P1, P2, P3, P4 and so on, all the things are going to be stored onto the buffer. Suppose X processing is executing in the CPU. Suppose, or like, let me explain you what do you mean by a buffer. So if X process has been completed its task, so here P1 is already there, so we'll allocate P1 to the CPU. It is very much easy. If the buffer is not there, we have to take some process here, and then suppose Y process, and that process we have to given to the CPU. It will be take some amount of time. At that time the CPU will be in ideal state, but we don't want to make our CPU to be in ideal state. We have to make the CPU as much busy as possible. So that is the reason why we are going to make a buffer. If P1 is completed, then P2 will be executing in the CPU. If P2 completed, P3 will be executing, like that. We will be going to take the instructions from the buffer and we will be going to give it to the processor. Here comes the process management concept. So process management, in the sense managing of processes, we call it as a process management. So fine, here we are going to have the P1 and we are going to have the P2 and we are going to have the P3. So managing of processes is nothing but among all the processes, which process has to be given to the CPU. Why? Because process P1 needs 5 minutes of time, process P2 needs 7 minutes of time, but process P3 needs only 2 minutes of time. Is it not so? So in order to execute 2 minutes of time, how much time it is going to wait? So how much time it is waiting? Here how much time it is waiting? 5 plus 7, which is going to be 12 minutes of time it is going to be waiting. Fine. So 12 minutes of time it is waiting. So it requires only 2 minutes of time. Here comes the concept of process management, managing the processes. Which process to be sent to the CPU? If P3 is first sent to the CPU, it will be completing its job in 2 milliseconds of time, and next if P1 is sent to the CPU, it will get completed in 5 minutes of time, and later on if P2 has sent, it will be completing its task in 7 minutes of time. This managing of processes should be done. Why? Because suppose if the time period is less for number of processes, so if we are going to take many of the processes, here only 3 processes are there. Suppose if there are some 15 processes, and from 0 1 to from 4 15 processes are there, so this 15th processes requires only 1 millisecond of time. So but these processes 1 to 15 14 processes requires 1 hour of time to complete. So for 1 millisecond, how much time this 15 processes is waiting? It is waiting nearly for 1 hour of time, which is a very worse situation. So in order to overcome all this, what we have to do is we have to schedule the processes. So process management, in the sense processing, managing of processes, like which should go first, which should go later. Suppose we want to send in first come first order itself, first come first serve, in the sense here, like in this order only we have to send P1, P2, P3 and P4. Here what we'll be going to do is, like we'll be going to keep a time slice, we'll be going to keep a time slice, time slice in the sense time slice of 2 minutes irrespective of time. Like here the process P1 requires 2 minutes or 2 seconds, here we'll keep. So time slice is 2 seconds. Here process P1 requires 5 seconds, but here the process P1 will execute only for 2 seconds. How much time left over here? 3 seconds of time is going to be left over here. Fine. So this is how we'll be going to, here 3 seconds time is left, and for this seventh process also 2 minutes completed. For this second process 5 minutes of time is left, and for P5 it is completed, and again it will be going to give time for P1, and P1 will be going to left with 1 millisecond, and P2 will be going to left with 3 milliseconds. Again it will be coming, P1 task executed, and finally P2 is going to be executed. This is how managing of processes has to be done. If there is no process management, it is in a worse situation that all the things is going to get delayed. So that is the importance of process management, and it is, as you have seen, it is the one of the important functionality of the operating system. We'll be going to have a process management as a whole chapter, but here in this introductory part, like we'll be going to see what is the process management, what is the memory management and everything. So this is how the process management is going to be done. Fine. So that is a process management, and next one is the memory management. So memory management is nothing but managing of memory. Fine. So memory management is nothing but managing of memory. So when it comes to the memory management, as you all know, like you will be going to have the main memory and you will be going to have the secondary memory. So this one is the main memory and this one is the secondary memory. So these are the two basic memories we are having. We are having cache memory, we are having associative memory, but as it is an introductory part, we will be going to see regarding this main memory and the secondary memory. Fine. So what do you mean by a main memory and what do you mean by a secondary memory? So main memory is nothing but this is the main memory and this is the secondary memory. Fine. Main memory in the sense each and every program that is going to be executed should be loaded in the main memory. Until unless that program has been loaded onto the main memory, we can't execute a single program also. But what is the drawback of this main memory? So what is the drawback of this main memory? This main memory size is very small, but the execution speed is high. Fine. The drawback of this main memory, it is the main memory size is very small. It can accommodate only few number of instructions. So memory management in the sense, suppose I'm having a process P1. This process P1 is going to have some 10 some 100 instructions, but here the capacity of main memory is 75 instructions only. So the capacity of main memory is 75 instructions, but here the process P1 is going to have 100 instructions. So at present this process P1 has been stored in secondary memory. Why? Because as we all know, secondary memory is very large, it can accommodate any number of instructions. So that is the reason why we are going to have all the processes onto the secondary memory. But we, in order to execute this P1 process, this P1 process has to be dumped onto the main memory. Fine. Suppose this address is 175. So these memory locations means 175 instructions it can accommodate, but some 50 instructions have been stored by previous program. So 50 instructions has been stored by previous program. Fine. So what it is going to do is, like when we are going to have this one, so we can't accommodate all the 100 instructions onto the main memory. Why? Because 50 are already occupied and here another 50 only left. So what we are going to do is, we are going to manage the main memory. So whatever the instructions that are going to be needed, those instructions are dumped onto the main memory, and what are the instructions that are not needed, those instructions are swapped out of the main memory. So by swap in and swap out concept, we can make a free space onto the main memory. So this is how we are going to manage the memory. As the main memory size is very small, it can't accommodate much number of instructions. So what the thing will be going to do is, we will be going to store the all the instructions onto the secondary memory. In order to execute a particular program, that program should be in the main memory. But here the main memory is filled with some X number of instructions are filled with some X program. Here we are having 100 instructions. So what it is going to do is, here these X instructions, these 50 instructions are swapping out of the main memory, so that here the 100 space is available. So these 100 instructions are dumped onto the main memory so that it can execute its task. This is how the memory management is going to be done. Memory management is nothing but managing of memory, like which instructions to be swapped out, which instructions to be swapped in, is going to be taken by the operating system. Operating system, one of the functionality is the memory management. So this is one of the important concept we are having. Fine. And next one is the CPU scheduling. As I have said you before, CPU scheduling in the sense, if a number of processes P1, P2, P3, as I have said you before, like how many these processes, which process should accommodate first to the CPU, which process we have to give first to the CPU. For this scheduling, you will be going to have different algorithms. The first one is FCFS, first come first serve. Next one is shortest job first. Next one is round robin. So these are the some important CPU scheduling algorithms. So based on these scheduling algorithms, we'll be going to accommodate, or we'll be going to see which process should enter into the should give priority, and how much time that process should execute in the CPU, and all these things will be going to taken care by the CPU scheduling. And last one is the hardware. So what are the hardware parts? What are the hardware parts? As we all know, like mouse, keyboard, like pen drives, the scanners, all this comes under the hardware part. Speakers. So which process has to be accommodated to the which hardware part, which is requesting the which hardware part, everything we'll be going to see in the hardware thing. So this is how we'll be going to have different layers. So we are keeping a different layers in order to provide security and protection too. But when it comes to the simple structure, we don't have any security, anyone can access anything. So there is a lots and lots chances of crashing. If it has been crashed, the data would have been lost. So in order to overcome that all those difficulties, we have gone for this layering type. In this layering, if we want to do any process related things, we'll be going for the fourth layer. If you want to give if you want to do any user programs, means we'll be going for the sixth layer. And if you want to concern this hardware parts, means we'll be going for the first layer. So whatever the thing we are in need of, we'll be going to that particular layer only, and a particular task will be going to be done. Will not touch all the layers, so remaining all the layers are safe. So this is the advantage of how when we have done the layering. And the next concept is operating system operations. So what are the operating operations that are going to be done by the operating system? So we call it as a dual mode operations. So dual mode operations are, dual means two, there are two different modes of operation. The first one is the user mode, and second one is the kernel mode. So let me explain you with the diagram. Fine. So user mode and the kernel mode. So here, so this is the user mode, and here we'll be going to have the kernel mode. These two modes, we call it as the dual mode. So this is the user mode, and this we call it as a kernel mode. Fine. User mode in the sense application, user application programs. What are the application programs that is going to be done by the user? Those programs are going to be done in the user mode. Kernel mode in the sense, like here, as have you said you before, whenever we want to operate, or whenever we want a hardware device, the user, whenever we want this hardware device, the user can't directly communicate with the hardware devices. So what we are going to do is, we are keeping an interface, that is an operating system. This kernel is a part of an operating system. So in between, in order to communicate with the hardware devices, what we have kept, we have kept the operating system. And what do you mean by a kernel? In the sense, it is a part of the operating system in which all the hardware related operations are going to be taken part in the kernel only. Suppose if user want to use some particular printer, So user can't directly access the printer. Why? Because a printer is an hardware device. In order to communicate with the hardware devices, we need an interface. That interface we call it as an operating system. In the operating system, we are having a part which is known as a kernel, which is going to take all the parts relating to the hardware parts of a computer. Fine. Now the user is going to uh, give an instruction to the operating system by making use of a system call. System call is nothing but invoking the operating system. So user, I want to make a I want to make use of a printer, so that invoking system call we'll be going to have this operating system. So when this system call has been occurred, a trap is going to be generated. Trap in the sense moving from user mode to kernel mode. When we are in user mode, only the user tasks are going to be done. That is, suppose when with the PC, we can on the PC we can do some sort of things with the PC. That is the user mode. But when it comes with the hardware, we can't do all the things. So that is the thing we'll be going only by the kernel mode. Here in this user mode, the mode bit here, the mode bit will be going to be 1, and in the kernel mode the mode bit is going to be 0. I'll be going to show you with a diagram. So this is the diagram of user mode and the kernel mode. User mode in the sense user processes, the user related things are going to be there in the user mode. So in order to say, like suppose this user wants a printer, so he has to say that to the operating system. How he will be going to say? By making use of a system call. System call is nothing but an invoking call to the operating system. He'll just create a system, make a system call to the operating system that I need a printer. So now the user has to change from user mode to kernel mode. Why? Because the hardware related parts are going to be done in the kernel only. Now here the user process, when the user is in user mode, here the mode bit is equals to 1. When he shifts from user process to the user mode to the kernel mode, the mode bit is going to be changing from 1 to 0. So what do you mean by a trap? In the sense changing from user mode to kernel mode, we call it as a trap. Here the user is going to make use of a printer, and then he has to go to the user mode once again, and again here the mode bit will be changing from 0 to 1 when he once return back to the user process. So these are the two different modes we are having, user mode as well as the kernel mode. User mode in the sense user relating items are going to be done in the user mode, and hardware related items can be done in the kernel mode. If you want to move from user mode to kernel mode, the user has to generate a trap. Trap is nothing but changing from user mode to kernel mode, we call it as a trap. In user mode we have the mode bit is equals to 1. Once again when we shifted from kernel user mode to kernel mode, the mode bit is equals to 0. So in 0 in the sense kernel mode, so the user is going to make use of the operating system, and then he has to return back to the user mode, and then the mode bit is again changing from 0 to 1. So these are the two different modes you are having. So these two modes combinedly we'll call it as a dual mode operations. So operating system operations in the sense dual mode operations. The one is the user mode and second one is the kernel mode. So as we have seen before, the layers, user programs, IO buffer, process management, memory management, CPU scheduling, hardware, all these are the different layers of the layered architecture of an operating system. Fine. And next one is the process. So what do you mean by a process? Process is a program that is being executed. Fine. Once it has gone from process, once it has entered the CPU, then it is called as a program. Fine. While the program is a collection of instructions written into the language that the operating system understands. So that slight difference means process means a program in execution, we call it as a process. So when a program is loaded onto the main memory and it becomes the process. Fine. If it is not loaded, we call it as a program. When it has been loaded onto the main memory, we call it as a process. When it has been loaded, it can be divided into four sections: the stack section, heap section, text section, and the data section. Stack section contains a temporary data such as what are the functions, what are the methods, what are the return addresses, what are the local variables we have declared. All the things we are going to be having the stack section. When it comes to the heap section, this is a dynamic DMA, dynamic allocation, allocated memory to a process during the runtime. That is the heap section. Text in the sense, the current activity which is going to be represented by the program counter, we call it as a text section. And data section contains the static variables as well as the global variables what we have declared. All these are going to be there in the data section. So this is the diagram of a process. And a process is when a program is loaded onto the main memory, it is going to have a process. A process contains all these things: stack section, heap section, data section, and the text section. This is how a process. A process is one of the major important functionality of the operating system. Fine, you will be going to study this process management as a separate unit, memory management as a separate unit, protection and security as a separate unit. All the functionalities we will be going to study as each and every unit of the operating system. So these are the topics that we have been covered today. So what is the computer system organization? As we are well known at, like input devices, hardware, memory, CPU, all these are the parts. Like how we are going to organize all those things in order to have a better execution environment. So that is the computer system organization. And next one is operating system structure. The basically we are having two different structures, that is the simple system structure and the layered structure. Simple system in the sense all the things we are going to have at a single place, so there is a possibility of loss of data. So in order to overcome that, we have gone for the layered structure. Layered structure means different layers we are having. In which layer we want to use, we can use that particular layer only. And what are the operating system operations in the sense, like we will be going to have a dual operation, like the user mode operation as well as the kernel mode operation. User related operations are going to be done in the user mode, and hardware related operations are going to be done in the kernel mode. When a user wants to shift from user mode to kernel mode, a trap is going to be generated. What do you mean by a trap? In the sense, shifting from user mode to kernel mode. When the user is in user mode, the mode bit is equals to 1. When he shifts from user mode to kernel mode, the mode bit is equals to 0. When we have done the operation in the kernel mode, again we have to go back to the user mode. So the mode bit again changes from 0 to 1. And what do you mean by a process? A program in execution, we call it as a process. Once the program has been loaded onto the main memory, that we call it as a process. A process have heap, stack, text, all the sections we'll be going to have. And that's all for today. Thank you all. Have a nice day, students. We'll meet tomorrow. Thank you.